One of the core elements of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run is growth, be it both mentally or physically. Examples being how Johnny grew both spiritually and physically stronger in his pursuit of the spin, or on how Gyro grew independent as a person from his father and his family, becoming a man in his own right. Though one of the strangest, and of course saddest cases of growth coming from Steel Ball Run is that of the wife of a successful entrepreneur, this being Lucy Steele and her near parasitic relationship with the corpse of the saint. Lucy Steele is one of the most important characters for the events of Steel Ball Run, as she's not only the person who inspired the idea for the namesake of the part, that being the Steel Ball Run race, but she's also the person who ended up bearing, birthing, and arguably controlling the corpse of the saint by the end of the part. And over the events of the race, she's forced to mature and become a very different person than how she started. Though before we get too deep into that, we should discuss the meaning behind her name. Lucy Steele, or should I say Lucy Pendleton, is a name that is comprised of a multitude of references that work well with her character. Starting first with her in-series reference name, this being her maiden name Pendleton, which is a direct reference to the maiden name of Jonathan Joestar's wife, Irina Pendleton from Phantom Blood, which in itself is a reference to the Pendleton Woolen Mill, an American textile-based company opened in 1863, but was only incorporated in 1903. And this mill was founded by English immigrant Thomas Lister Kay, who moved to America and found success due to his history of textile trade prior to the move. And later he left his factory to be inherited by his American wife and daughter. So the idea of Lucy receiving her name from Irina works quite well with this reference, as it is an English woman's name being inherited by an American girl. But more importantly, you have Lucy's given name, which is a direct reference to the famous Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which is a song created by John Lennon after he saw his son drawing a picture of his friend Lucy O'Donnell. And when he asked his son, "What are you drawing?" he answered, "It's Lucy. She's in the sky with diamonds," which lit a creative fire under Lennon. He began working right away. Lucy as a character reflects the history of the song quite well, as through her kindness she helped encourage a drunken and downtrodden Stephen Steele to actually pursue his racing idea, giving him the advice to make the Steel Ball race a big cash prize event, as she believes all dreams worth chasing need to be big. This advice helped him sell the idea and was the catalyst for basically the whole part. Along with this, Lucy follows the narrative of the song quite well, as according to both Lennon and McCarthy, the song is based off of a scene from Alice in Wonderland, and Lucy follows the role of Alice slowly falling down the rabbit hole of Funny Valentine's conspiracy, fitting even more that D4C is shaped like a rabbit. And thanks to the investigation, Lucy does end up putting her life in danger countless times, but the most life-threatening thing she encountered was when she had a stand manifest within her, this being Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a formless, close-range, reality-altering stand that fuses with the body of its user and slowly removes and replaces specific segments of that user's body with pieces of the corpse of the saint. Along with this, it also hardens other parts of the body, such as skin, turning it into a steel-like reflective surface. Along with this, the tears can be turned into crude dagger-like shapes. Though, for the most part, this body manipulation is mostly just a side effect of the corpse parts being brought together, and the tear daggers were done visually because Araki wanted to represent how a woman's tears can be their own kind of weapon. Though because of that, Araki made the tear daggers an important factor in how the major ability for the stand works, that being Divine Protection. Divine Protection is an ability that warps the world around its user to ensure their safety. It does this by creating a chain of coincidences that completely cripple its carrier's captors. Some examples of the stand in action are when Lucy Steele was being subdued by Valentine's goons. One of them tried to tranquilize Lucy and make her as docile as a winter catfish, but in her attempt to escape, she ends up knocking a bottle onto the floor, which spills its contents all over that said floor, and one of the guards steps on the liquid that came out of the bottle, slipping, not only letting Lucy Steele escape, but also causing the bottle to shatter and pieces getting in his eye. Along with this, another example is when she's cornered, caught between two guards, one in hiding and one approaching her. Suddenly, a mouse appears spooking Lucy, causing her to jolt backwards into the guard behind her. Along with this, she pulled on the door to her side, swinging it open on the face of the guard who was in front of her. Along with this, her action of slamming into the guard behind her caused him to swing around into the now open door, jamming a syringe into the neck of an approaching soldier, which causes him to fire his gun into the guard who was in front of her that got hit by the door, basically allowing Lucy to successfully subdue 3 guards at once while remaining relatively unharmed. Ticket to Ride will basically bend reality around Lucy to ensure that she is safe. Along with this, Ticket to Ride's coincidence crafting capabilities don't just stop at living things. She can also manipulate the fate of non-living things as well, as we see when Lucy Steele writes a note on her dress that, through a string of coincidences, ends up on the mainland where she wants it. Now, the name Ticket to Ride comes from the same source as Lucy's own name, that being the Beatles and their 7th consecutive #1 hit, Ticket to Ride, which comes from the band's 5th album, Help. And the song itself tells the story of a girl writing out her life that is being narrated to her, which fits quite well with the arc Ticket to Ride. As during the arc which Ticket to Ride was introduced in, Lucy Steele finds herself following a voice in her head, one that keeps giving her advice and telling her to cut if she's scared. This voice ends up being the voice of President Funny Valentine, leading her to him so that he can keep her safe and secret from the rest of the world. Along with this, the name Ticket to Ride fits thematically with Valentine's future stand upgrade, this ability being Love Train. As you can say, Valentine boarded his Love Train because he had a ticket to ride, which he obtained through a bunch of filthy acts at a reasonable price. Along with this, Ticket to Ride's ability to create coincidence-based, elaborate death scenes seems to be somewhat based on the death scenes from the Final Destination film series, which isn't too far out of the question given that Araki appears to be a fan of those movies, especially since he listed the original as one of the 9th best horror movies ever made. Though Ticket to Ride, much like a lot of aspects of Lucy Steele's life, isn't really her creation. It's a stand of the corpse that is being used through her and slowly killing her, but she chooses to live with the pain in order to protect the man that she loves, which fits with a lot of her life actually, as throughout the events of Steel Ball Run, she has more and more responsibility thrust onto her that might have actually ended up breaking her as a person, as in the process to try to protect her husband, she ends up having to defend herself from a multitude of stand users without an ability to see stands herself, and then she's tasked with heavy missions such as going after the president herself and being the vessel for the reincarnation of the corpse. And what made each of these encounters worse and worse is they always ended with some sort of collateral damage for the people around her, be it people she was close to like Mountain Tim or Hot Pants, or others who were just caught up in a situation bigger than they could imagine like Scarlet Valentine. Though one of the worst things that may have happened to her was when she was forced into motherhood by an angel-like figure who appeared before her and, much like the Virgin Mary, impregnated Lucy Steele with the final piece of the saint corpse, that being the head of the saint. And we see through all these events Lucy Steele being slowly corrupted from her innocent nature into one of the most hardcore, no-nonsense, no-bullshit characters in the part. She goes from a young girl who barely spoke at all to shooting Blackmore, drugging the First Lady, and cutting off the head of the original universe Diego's corpse so that she can have a last resort ace in the hole for dealing with alternate universe Diego. Lucy Steele is probably the character who experienced the most amount of change throughout the entirety of Steel Ball Run, which is why it's so fitting that Lucy Steele is assumedly the one who takes control of the corpse at the very end of the part, as she was not only the one who witnessed the speech about taking the first napkin and the influence that can have, but we know that whoever seals the tomb will claim ownership of the corpse and influence its will, and that we see that she prevents Diego from sealing the tomb, leaving the corpse open to a new worthy owner. There are multiple scenes before and after Diego's death that emphasize that the tomb was not shut by Diego. We also know for a fact that Lucy is a proven worthy owner of the corpse given the fact that she birthed the damn thing, and that she was selected by whatever the angel was that impregnated her. And finally, we see when Steven Steele catches up to Lucy that the door was indeed shut, meaning that she had to be the one who shut it, which in turn means she is the one who claimed the corpse. But what makes this suspicious is she decides not to inform Steven about this, likely not wanting to worry him, but her pause and looking at her hands and realizing that she, at the end of the day, is the person who came out the most on top in this race, the person who was the least likely to succeed, walked away with complete control over the fortune of the world. I guess she was right in saying that real dreams should be that big. Now, what her control over the corpse's will mean for the future of JoJo, I don't really know. Maybe Araki will use it for a future plot element in part 8 or 9, or maybe she won't use the corpse at all and her saying that it's buried was a way of saying that she'll never abuse her ownership of it. Either way, I think it's one of the most fitting endings for a character in the series, and I'd love to see it expanded on at some point in the future. But until then, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy, and if you want to claim ownership over your own holy relic, well, you can do so by picking up a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimonetta.com.